Hey folks, and welcome to
Voices of StarCraft,
your StarCraft 2 community podcast. Here we're going to be going over all relevant news in the StarCraft 2 world. We'll be covering things from patch notes, how they affect changes in the metagame for your games at home, any play that you might have, as well as local tournament or recent tournament news and hot topics from you guys in the community. Basically, we're going to be answering your questions, anything you were wondering, any questions that you have. So let's just hop right into it. All right, David, so why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the folks at home?
Hey guys, I'm Vitensby from the StarCraft 2 Dudes channel over on YouTube. On my channel, I like to talk about 3 different video series I have going on. We have, of course, the main focus of the channel is StarCraft 2. It's mostly Zerg strategy guides, analysis, talking about, lots of things that have to do with Zerg. Basically, everything Zerg is on my channel. And if you're a Terran or Protoss player, a lot of Terran and Protoss players come to my channel and they like to see what the other guys are up to. So feel free to check it out if you like that. Also, if you like World of Warcraft, I do have gold making guides up on my channel. And recently I've started a series on Minecraft. It's mining and building guides.
Very good, very good. And why don't you introduce yourself to everyone at home as well, Bobby?
All right, well, I am Trebis from SC2 Noob School. Obviously, my channel is youtube.com/SC2 Noob School, and basically what I focus on is just teaching players a lot of the fundamentals to the game, and I try to work on just kind of encapsulating everything as much as possible, so just taking like one concept and really putting it underneath the microscope. I do a lot of stuff inside like unit tester programs, so we can really just focus on one aspect of the game and really dive into it. So yeah, I'm really excited to be on this podcast called... Yeah, we spent a lot of time working on that name, so I just want to say it as often as possible. Man, what a great name, a podcast, to be...
Voices of StarCraft.
I hate you, by the way. All right, and as for myself, I am Dennis Force Duhamel. You can see my content at forcestrategygaming.com, and there's actually going to be a link to my separate YouTube channels. We have a StarCraft 2 coverage. We're also moving into Diablo 3 coverage as the beta ramps up there. But basically, in the StarCraft 2 channel, I go over strategies. I kind of break down strategies of high-level diamond and professional players, and kind of try to simplify it and make it easy and understandable for you guys there. All right, so let's just jump into things today. We have a few big topics that we wanted to mention. First and foremost is the GSL. Now, I know you had some information for us on that, Bobby. You want to start things off?
Yeah, well, okay. I don't know how much everyone out there has been following the GSL, but it's basically, the biggest StarCraft tournament in the world in Korea, and I at least want to mention the qualifiers just happened. The actual tournament is going to start Monday, where I think they're doing something. They're casting like 11 games in a day or something. I don't know. It's ridiculous. Yeah. But we did get some foreigners actually qualifying. So we've got E.G. Idra, obviously living in Korea right now. He did qualify. We also have Sen, who I think is from like Taiwan, and Liquid Ret, who Liquid Ret just arrived in Korea from where was he from? I think he's from Amsterdam. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, he just arrived in the OGS TL house. And then we also got Heypro playing Zerg, Liquid Heypro.
Very cool. And when's the date for that? When's that going to be taking place?
The date itself, I don't know. It's Monday the 22nd for us, although it's Korean time, so not sure when that's actually going to be.
The actual start date, but it is going to be on Monday the 22nd. We're going to be seeing the GSL.
That's when I'll be at work, like desperately trying to not go find the VODs on my computer and get myself fired. That's when I'll be doing that. So
yeah, very cool, very cool.
And if you guys are a big fan of the StarCraft 1 pro gamer scene, we do have some big names coming into this. From there, we have July, aka July Zerg. You may know him. Also, of course, the man himself, Slayer's Boxer. Just thrown out 2 big names. Whoa, yeah. Thrown out 2 big names from the StarCraft. Pretty much household names, I would say. StarCraft 1.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, anyone who was a big fan of StarCraft 1 certainly knows Slayer Boxer. You can't really. You must have had your head in the sand if you were around in StarCraft 1 and hadn't heard about him. Now, do we have any ideas as to predictions on the outcome? Is there any favorites at the moment? What about you guys? What do you think, Bobby? Have any favorites for this tournament? Who you think's going to win?
I don't think at this point you can really call anyone a favorite. With the game just being so new, people are figuring out strategies all the time, and the metagame is shifting. I just don't think there's really an environment where you can have a real, one person who's a tip top player. Now, the one thing that people are talking about is there's a bit of a race imbalance here. I shouldn't have used the word imbalance. That was actually bad.
Well, before you go into that, I just wanted to say that you can't really predict. Because Fruit Dealer, no one was expecting a Zerg to win, let alone Fruit Dealer to came out of nowhere in the first GSL, and then the second GSL you had Nest T, who kind of came out of nowhere as well. He wasn't even on a sponsored team in the second GSL. So I don't think anyone placed their money on these two players, but these two players took it all the way to the very top. There's a lot of upsets. It really depends on the matches that you get. We saw Idra go out last time in his EVZ. Lots of randomness can happen in those brackets, and it just really depends on what races you're strong against that you play against. So, but if I was going to place my money, it's always going to be on a Zerg. As you guys who follow my StarCraft 2 channel know, always rooting for the Zerg.
Clearly for the Swarm, right? And that's actually good to go back to what you said. That's something that I was going to bring up as well. That here stateside, to bring relevance to any people who don't follow things overseas, Idra's been a big fan favorite for quite some time, and like you said, he was just knocked out, and that was a huge disappointment for a lot of his fans, I'm sure. But yeah, it goes back to what Bobby was saying, that you can't really play favorites at this point. It's too early in the game. Even build orders and how matchups are played out. It was so solidified how games were played in StarCraft 1 come the end of the 10 years. People kind of knew generally what to expect, but right now it's kind of all over the place as far as builds and everything. Now, I know you were talking about that bad word that we can't mention, imbalance. What were we looking at over there, Bobby?
Imba. Okay, we got 27 Zergs. This is out of 64 people. We have 27 Zergs, 24 Protoss, 24 Terran, and 12 Protoss, and one random, which is pretty awesome. Go that guy for getting in GSL playing random. Whoa. That's awesome. But you obviously have to look at Protoss and say, wow, they only have 12 people representing them in the GSL. Is that statistically significant, do you think?
Well, we saw in the first GSL that most people were Terran. It was people were joking that it was going to be like an all Terran top 8 or all Terran top 16. Even in the other tournaments, MLG and Intel Extreme Masters, people when Terran was we're not going to say imbalanced. When people were saying that. That it was pretty much everyone switched Terran. Of course, now we have the little one going back to Zerg, and we certainly see much more of a Zerg representation in this one compared to the first one. That's for sure. I'm just hoping that we get some good games. Really, I mean, I don't think that the race matchup and who makes it through. Like I said, a lot of things are random. A lot of things are not meant. A lot of things you'd think would just be taken for granted don't necessarily happen because there's so many good players there. Now, to bring up a good point on this, we do have Nada not placing at all. We do have Baby Bye Bye not placing at all. We do have Loner not placing at all. We do have OGS and Snare. I mean, the list goes on and on. Segueing into another little discussion of players that are top players. Loner's considered one of the best, if not the best, in China. Nada was one of the best StarCraft 1 pro gamers, and OGS and Snare placed very, very high into the other GSLs, so at least the first one. So, and I think he was actually the one that knocked out Idra out of the first one, was it? Might be wrong, but yeah. So everything's up in the air. So I don't think it means much of anything.
Yeah, fair enough. And how about you, Bobby? Any thoughts on what we just covered there? Or?
I pretty much agree with everything you just said. And it could even be a situation where the better players are just favoring playing Zerg over Protoss. I mean, it could simply be that. So I don't think there's any reason to look at this as racial imbalance yet. We need just more examples. And I got to throw in, I forgot to mention Liquid Jinro, who just won MLG Dallas.
How could you
also
forget?
Made it. I totally forgot Jinro. I'm so sorry, Jinro.
Unbelievable.
I actually talked to him.
So happy, yeah, awesome. I'm so happy that Jinro got through because he had 2. He did not place in the first 2, and I was disappointed. I know that guy. He went all the way out there and then didn't place, and it's just like it must be crushing. I feel bad for all those guys when they got knocked out, even if I don't even like Terran or Protoss on that particular game. So
you know how many. There were so many foreigners that were actually within one game of getting in the round of 64. It was I might be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure it was In Control, Kiwi Kaki, Huck, and Select. Mm-hmm. At least those people were literally one game away from qualifying. Yeah. So we could have even seen a lot more foreigners in the GSL. It's pretty exciting.
And I think worldwide, that's kind of something that wasn't expected. We kind of assumed when beta was going on and we had all the tournaments here stateside and then there was all the tournaments overseas, everyone just assumed that once the game came out and everything merged together that just everything on the Western Hemisphere would just be crushed basically. But that definitely, like you said, we're on the cusp of that. We're not too far away, and I guess Idra is kind of a shining example of the fact that we can have competitive Westerners compete in StarCraft 2. Most certainly. All right, well, let's move on. Following the pro scene, we have some more news here. It seems that GOM TV is going to be unionizing some StarCraft 2 action here. So it's the StarCraft 2 Association is the name of that. And Bobby, I know that you had some coverage on that as well. So you want mind going into detail about that?
Yeah, it's the least creative name for an association. It's literally called StarCraft 2 Association.
Yeah.
Basically what it is, if you were following the Brood War scene at all, there was a organization called KESPA, Korean Esports Players Association, that ruled over all the players and the teams and managers and coaches and all that stuff, kind of with an iron fist, and a lot of people really didn't like KESPA as an organization. But one is, because StarCraft 2 is a new game, there's a new one forming, and this one is under GOM TV or GRETEX rule, and all the players from the big teams in Korea, Prime, OGS, TSL, teams like that, they all have players and coaches that are going to be on panels, and they'll oversee make sure players are treated right and all this stuff. So this may be a big story in the future, just seeing how this organization is basically going to treat their players.
Yeah, and I know that there's lots of jokes and talks about how the StarCraft 2 scene, or just the StarCraft scene period, is over there, and people slaving away for 12 hours a day without bathroom or food breaks. So the fact that there's this kind of emphasis, and I think that kind of harkens back to the fact that everything in general when it comes to the competitive esports is taking more of a serious turn. I mean, and this even goes further back into the fact that gaming is becoming more and more relevant as an accepted media among people, and the fact that we're having a unionization for StarCraft 2 players really goes into that. You have any thoughts on that there, David?
Yeah, I was just thinking about our last topic and this one. The one thing that's really stopping, I think, esports from going worldwide is basically that it's in Korea and you have to be in Korea for the big money prizes. So part of the reason why we don't see a lot of foreigners over there is that you have to be on a sponsored team to get in. But if you live in Korea, you can just go down to the local, to where the GSL is, and just play. So anyone can get in over there as long as you live there, and it's not that difficult. But for someone to come from the United States or from Europe, that could be several $1,000 investment. Then you have to find some place to live, and it's just difficult. So I think the reason why you see, I don't know percentage, but you see a majority of the players in the GSL being from Korea or from Asia is that reason. So.
Yeah, just the fact that it's all been centralized there, and that makes sense. And I guess segueing from that brings us perfectly into our next topic here.
One second, and if I'm reading that right, all of those teams are Korean teams. If I'm reading this right, so
they absolutely are.
Yeah, so that's just another thing that's obviously StarCraft's home in this world is Korea. It's like a national sport there. It's like baseball in the United States. So it's understandable, but it's still kind of disappointing that the focus is still there. We do have MLG, we do have other events like Intel Extreme Masters, stuff like that, but the prize pool is just not as big, so there's not as much focus and incentive on that. So hopefully things will change. You bringing esports outside of Korea, StarCraft 2 esports would be amazing, and it's there, but it's just not as big, and I hope it gets that big.
Yeah, and yeah, like basically like I was saying, that we're really starting to see a trend move in that direction. Now specifically on that topic, we do have the news of the Brazilian game show. Now, for those of you who don't know, Blizzard is going to be hosting this. It's going to be taking place in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil on November the 20th, which is past? No, it's coming up this Saturday. So we're gonna be looking to see that. Now, implications to this is really showing a worldwide spread of esports. It is the first ever Latin America StarCraft 2 tournament, and that's pretty exciting news. Blizzard's gonna be hosting that. You guys have any thoughts onto the spread of esports worldwide and implications that may have?
I mean, it's happening. If you just look at like how more wired the entire world is, you could throw some globalization talk in here, but yeah, it's just spreading everywhere. You see things like, this isn't StarCraft, but you see games like Call of Duty Black Ops that came out, and it was like the most successful release of a media product like ever. And so games are as big as movies, as big as TV shows, and I really think it's just a matter of time before we have something that looks, not the same as what it looks like in Korea, but, a legitimate esports organization that can really support a lot of players and a lot of teams.
Yeah, and whether or not it's going to reach that level, I don't think it's a question of if. I think it's more when. I mean, our last major tournament, the last the last MLG tournament, I believe the prize pool was 80,000. Is that correct? That was either BlizzCon or the last MLG, one or the other. But an $80,000 prize pool, that's nothing to shake a stick at. That's pretty serious business. And it's just, gaming in general has been kind of picking up momentum, and MLG is really the thing that's really been in the forefront of it, at least as of late. That's really been the big name that people kind of are recognizing. It's the household name, if you will. How about you, David? Any thoughts on the matter?
Well, I think in regards to Latin America, we do have some really stellar players coming out of there. I think Phoenix is one of them. I believe he plays Protoss. So they definitely deserve a tournament down there. There's some great players that have been playing. I believe Phoenix even played at BlizzCon. So, and I think the prize pool for MLG, I don't know if you meant to say GSL, but the GSL was the $85,000 prize pool.
Okay.
And then the MLG, I think, was like something like 10,000, right,
Yeah.
Trebis? Something like that.
Top prize, the top prize general one was like 6,000 something, and then it dropped off after that. It was not a huge prize, especially standing next to all the Halo stuff that was going on at MLG. Those Halo kids made a ton. Those Halo bros. That was like the most bro part of that event, was all the Halo people.
That's really funny.
So maybe Blizzard can throw some more money into esports here in America. I mean, they certainly have it from all those WoW subscriptions. So maybe funneling some of that money into, like they did over in Korea. At least I think. I mean, I don't know their inner workings of their business, but I'm pretty sure that money, the prize pool, is probably coming from Blizzard, I would think, right, guys? Yeah. Some of it, at least.
You would have to imagine, with 15 million subscribers from WoW, raking in $15 a month, that they've got a little bit extra cash to toss in the direction of promoting something like that. And I certainly think that that's something that they will be looking to do stateside. Basically, that decision is probably going to be made based on the turnout of things like MLG here in the States, whether or not it gets enough to make it worthwhile for them to promote it. But I feel like there was a pretty good showing this year at the MLG events, and I definitely think there was a lot of enthusiasm behind them. At the very least, I know BlizzCon people were really excited about those games, and I believe they had Day 9 casting. Day 9 and Tasteless, and I think Artosis was there as well. Is that correct? Was he?
Mm-hmm.
I know for sure that you watched that, Vitensby.
Yeah, all three of them were there. It was pretty good. They did a good job.
Yeah, so that's definitely, they're having a good showing, and it seems to be a good turnout, and with that, hopefully that support comes from Blizzard. All right, so moving on to some community news. Looking at the forums today, we're basically going to be spending some time trying to look for some hot topics and things that you guys are discussing. Now, for those of you who didn't play in the beta, you may not know, but it used to be the fact that when you rallied units, or when you rallied buildings that were building units, when the units came out and they moved to whatever position that you had them rallied to, they would attack any enemy units that came within their path. Well, that has since been changed, as I'm sure you're aware. Any units that you've had rallied have been walking into Ultralisks and walking into the Fist of Zealots on a regular basis, and that's kind of forcing you to pay attention. So the topic of the post that we were looking at basically focusing in on that and asking whether or not we think that should change back and be reverted to when it used to do an attack move, or if it should stay a move command and you should have to pay attention to your units as they're moving from point A to point B. So how about you, David? What do you think about that? I know that you played in beta. What do you feel the differences are and the pros and cons to both positions on that?
Well, I think if they did change it so that it attack moves, it's a good thing if you're pushed back to your base, and let's say I'm being attacked by a Terran and they have, Marine Marauder Bioball right outside of my hatchery, and I just spawned those new units. Well, those new units, if you didn't readjust your rally point to be like 2 pixels away from your hatch, will basically get insta-gibbed without having to do something. So in that situation, I could see like it would be helpful. But as far as like gameplay, like if you're sending a scouting marine across the map and then there's or if you're sending marines to kind of rally and you're not looking at the mini map, someone's force could just sneak by and you might not actually see that. So I think for gameplay wise, like it makes you be more aware of what's going on and makes you do more things. So it's not necessarily, I don't see this idea as being something that it just takes away things from the game, if you know what I mean. It makes you can get a little lazier in a sense. Now, is that necessarily a bad thing? I mean, I remember the way it used to be, and it would just rally out, and people wouldn't have to worry about their units dying on the way over there. So, and if like if your little 4 barracks units just popped out, and there was a couple Zerglings there to pick them off, they would just attack back, and that kind of made it so that it rewards players that didn't necessarily have the skill to do that, which isn't always a bad thing for new players. But once you get used to the game, you should be more aware of things and be in control of your units, which is what an RTS game is all about. It's about the strategy, but it's also about the unit control. So I think it would take more away from the game adding this back in than anything else. So what do you guys think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm sorry there, Bobby. I think that that's the general idea and the purpose behind why they had done that was to try to make it so that not so that it was less noob friendly, but that it was more skill intensive. Being the game really that what Blizzard is trying to promote and what they're trying to push is a competitive game, which involves constant awareness, constant attention, and having those extra tasks, having to have a higher APM to do all these things at one time is, I think, kind of their focus in that. Now, specifically with you, Bobby, have you noticed in your own games or just in watching over games how much of an effect that has had on people, or basically how that's played out for people?
I mean, it can have all kinds of different impacts on all different skill levels. My, what I was basically wondering about is, would it actually be a good thing if they did, implement some kind of thing where you could actually change it, Because I feel like that would be another thing to increase the skill ceiling of the game, if that's what we're talking about here, is if you could have different rally points, one where it's a move command and one where it's an attack move command. Mm-hmm. Would that be better? Is that good because it's increasing the skill ceiling, or is that, doing too much for the player?
I mean, I would have to say, in regards to that specifically, as to whether or not you can have 2 different options, I would see little to no reason why anyone would ever do the move option if they had the choice to have that command automated. It seems that there's very little reason to not have the attack move as an option. And again, that goes back to the fact that the focus is having to pay constant attention. It's the same idea as what they had done, the changes that they had done to mineral gathering, where the workers aren't automatically picking things up. They are automatically picking things up, whereas in StarCraft originally that wasn't the case.
Right.
I'm certain that you had played StarCraft 1, David, hadn't you? You spent some time with that game.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. In fact, like a lot of my playstyle comes from that. Like some people would comment like, why do you have a second hatch in your base? And I'm like, well, that was really early on when I was like still in StarCraft 1 mode, Yeah. So
why do you have 8 hatches in your base? Yeah.
Dude, the 8 hatch strategy, you haven't heard about that? Dude, that's the next best thing on the Korean ladder right now.
Yeah, it's almost
you don't even know.
That's proxy hatching in your
Sauron,
opponent's base.
Sauron Zerg, yeah. Well, the player Drakorg's whole point was that there could be like a choice, and you give a choice, the players are going to naturally just take the less intensive one. You know, like you can still not rally your workers if you wanted to play that way, but no one does it because it's a feature in the game, and it just makes things easier. You know, rallying your SCVs from your command center, rallying your probes straight to the mineral line. So based off of that example, yeah, that's a choice right there. You don't have to rally there, but everyone does it. So this post, I don't think adds anything to the game. I think it would lower the skill ceiling, which is not necessarily a bad thing for new players, but once you get adjusted to the game, it takes away possibilities. You just are less aware. You know, like I gave the example, like one of the things that Zerglings do is pick off individual zealots that are rallying to the battle. That's how the whole way you defend against a zealot rush is by picking off that one zealot that just is coming in. You don't fight the main force. You try to pick them off one at a time. So if someone is automatically attacked move from there, then there's no micro to it. You know what I mean? There's no... I don't know. Does that example even hold, really? I mean,
no.
Once they're like under attack, wouldn't the zealot attack back once he gets surrounded? I don't even know.
Not if the thing is, it's not until he's going to reach that rally point that he's going to switch up and do an attack. So that certainly does hold true. I think to bring any sort of a conclusion to this, I think it's pretty obvious that, I mean, we'd be in agreement on the fact that it wouldn't be the most positive change for the game, considering it's a competitive game. I think that, you know, you should be able to take full advantage of the fact that your opponent isn't fully aware of the situation and they're not paying attention to all their units. This whole game is about, you know, macro and micro management and having to have constant awareness of everything that's going on the map, and that's what's going to make you a good player. So if your opponent's not paying attention to a rallied unit and you get to pick it off, well, you should take advantage of your awareness over their lack of awareness. And even in more like minute situations, like you had said, if your base is under attack and you have a Zergling rally to a point beyond where some units are, and you forget to re-rally it, then you're going to lose that unit because he's just going to walk right by and get shot in the face until he's dead. And so it forces people, you know, into that situation where they're having to pay attention. So
and checking your rally point is a good thing to get used to. That's what you do. Like there's good players that do that, and then there's players that learn to do that. You know, that's part of learning. It's part of learning to play the game. Someone mentioned in this thread, this is not clickcraft. Skill should not be measured by how many clicks are in a man's game, but rather the amount of strategy in a man's brain. Unfortunately, this is clickcraft. You aren't playing Civilization, a turn-based game. I think you are confused, sir. Not going to say your name, but
well, I mean, it's just as much clickcraft as it is scoutcraft. So that's
yeah, it's all the same. The skill, the strategy, the clicking, it's all the same. You have to be able to click to do the strategies, so whatever.
Yeah, and the auto match system is meant to be so that you're 50-50. You're supposed to be playing players that are, you know, a little bit better than you or a little bit worse than you according to the matchmaker. So you're going to get a challenge, and the auto match system kind of will sort that out. So skill is not really an issue. Like if you guys know what I mean by that, like, does that make sense?
No, absolutely. I would definitely say I'm in agreement with that. You get pushed towards that 50% win-loss ratio, and that's just how it plays out. So
you're not going to play Hydra when you're in bronze. So you're playing players relative to your own skill is how the system is supposed to work. You know, so anyways.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up our main topics for today. Moving on to our final segment. Basically, what we're going to be doing here is taking questions from you guys. You can send us questions on any of our individual YouTube pages or our Twitters or our tweets or our Tumblrs or however you want to get in contact with us. Just leave a little message that's stating it's for the podcast, and we'll try to answer a few of those questions every week. So we do have a few questions today from Cheshire. And starting off, we're going to look at this first question here. What do we have? Cheshire asks, I hear a lot of talk about mechanics being more important than build order for low-ranked players. Do you agree? And what mechanics should a bronze player prioritize? So let's start off with you, Bobby. What do you think about that? What mechanics should bronze players be focusing on? And is it more important than having a specific build order? Or do they kind of go hand in hand?
I definitely think they go hand in hand. It was kind of a little bit of what I said earlier. Like, how do you have good mechanics without having a good build order? It feels like you really can't do one without the other. but I understand how it can be a little bit difficult for players to kind of discover that build order that allows their mechanics to shine. Um, and I think that's why you watch channels like, mine and Vitensby's and Forces, is because to learn those build orders to fit around your mechanics.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
go ahead.
No, that I'm done. You can go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that to add on to that. I mean, that's 100% true. They go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. Now, with that said, obviously mechanics are very important. And to answer the second part of the question, what do you think? What do you think about the mechanics, and what are the most important mechanics for you, David? What do you feel like that bronze player should be focusing on?
We should focus on. I know it's not really a mechanic, but you should focus on playing the game and play the game as much as possible, because the only way you're going to get better is by playing the game. So first and foremost, you got to keep playing. So you're not going to be the best gamer in the world on the first day into StarCraft. So don't give up on stuff. Mechanics. I mean, getting used to your hotkeys is important. Not necessarily your control groups right off the bat. I would say hotkeys are definitely more important. Just getting used to, how do I build stuff? How do I spawn my drones? How do I build my SCVs? Start with the basics, because then you can pick up the control groups and figure out what works best for you. Just because Control 4 works best for this pro player doesn't mean it's the best thing for you. Some people, like the little one, put all their hatches in Control Group 1. And I know people that get flamed for doing that, but if the little one's doing it, then what's up with that, guys? So it's whatever is best for you. So working on those fundamentals, and then of course figuring out like how to macro, how to keep your money down, and then moving into the micromanagement aspect. Once you get the 1A down, then you want to see it play around with your units. Well, hey, if I move my Marines back after I use a stim and I kite the Zerglings, I don't take any damage. So micro and in your overall mechanics, the macro, it goes hand in hand, and just keep practicing. You'll get better at it. Just keep playing the game. There's days I get frustrated going into games and I'm like, I'm not playing my best, but
I gotta echo what he's saying there. It's like, I know, Force, I'm sure you've experienced the same thing with students, is that if you've got a student that doesn't know how to use his keyboard to his full potential, because that's really where a lot of those intros into having good mechanics come from, is being able to use your keyboard instead of using your mouse to do things. And really, unless you can do that, there's not, you're going to be pretty skill capped. I don't know. Do you get the same feeling from a lot of students you have, where you just have to work on hotkeys and shortcuts and all that stuff first?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that that's the most prevalent thing that I see is people need to really kind of understand that the more you can divide your actions, the more you can shorten the amount of time it takes to do XYZ thing, the better off you're going to be. Because this is a game of minutes, you know what I mean? It's a game of seconds. It's a game of milliseconds. It's really cut down to the really finite level. So you really have to focus on being able to cut back on the time. For example, I think one of the biggest things is people using those hotkeys, whether or not they're able to use it. I mean, there's just a whole slew of things. You need to make sure you have a strong economy. You need to know when to expand. You have to figure out how to scout and what to take from your scouting. There's just a whole list of things. But the most important things to focus on are trying to cut back the time that it takes for you to do things, because the more efficiently you can do things, the more effectively you're going to be able to do things. And I guess a premier example is for like a Protoss or a Terran player. If you're constantly making SCVs and you make sure that units are constantly coming out of your production buildings, you're going to be in a much better spot than someone who isn't. If you're making a Marine every chance you get, and then your opponent's only making one every minute and a half, you're at a clear advantage. That's kind of at the most basic level. The most basic way I can really describe it. So that's definitely true. Trying to use your hotkeys and be effective with what you're doing is probably one of the most important things.
And when you're just starting out, a lot of people go into like build order testers, or just play against the computer on like easy mode on like a sandbox. When I switched and started playing a little bit of Protoss, started playing a little bit of Terran, I was like, well, let's figure out what the hotkeys are first before I jump into a game, and and I'm playing against other players that I would play against on my main race. So don't be afraid to play around. Go into some 2v2s also. 2v2s is a great way to kind of pick up little things about how the game is played initially, and then you can jump back down to 1v1. It is a totally different game, 2v2 in some regards, but you can 2v2 isn't as serious as 1v1, so never, I don't take those games that seriously. So you can kind of do different things and try other things out, and just learn the game a little bit with that. So don't be afraid to.
Sorry to cut you off. Have either of you ever tried to actually play using just your mouse? Like, that's how I'll play some of my newbie friends sometimes. They'll be like, all right, I'm just going to use the mouse. And I play so bad. In fact, I really think we should have a 1v1v1. Us three, mouse only. Yeah.
How are we going to prove that, though? I know one of our egos is going to get in the way and start using the keyboard. So,
dude, I'm legit. I won't do it.
I don't even think I could play like that at this point. I mean,
so bad.
My hotkey management is not as good as it could be, but I know every single freaking hotkey, in the game right now. So for Zerg, at least.
It's a great way to play your newbie friends, though, because you can be trying to play well, but you just can't do it without using any hotkeys. Yeah. It's kind of fun.
So I guess, just that right there kind of solidifies the fact that we're pretty much in agreement that, being comfortable with those hotkeys, aka cutting down on the amount of time it takes for you to do things, shows a general strong improvement as far as like mechanics and what someone should be working on. Moving on to the next question here. We do have a few from Cheshire. His next question is, do you think there's room for casual players in the Battle.net ladder, or is it just an exercise in futility? Let's start off with you, David. What do you think? Battle.net, is that for noobs, or should they just stick to single-player, easy comp stomps?
So, a long time ago, when Zerg was grossly underpowered, before the 2 patches that buffed them to where they are now, I stopped playing for a while because I, like a lot of Zerg players, just got really, really, really frustrated. And then I came back, and I found that everything that I had learned was still there. So in regards to being casual, I think you can play the game as long as you learn it. It's like riding a bike, as long as you enjoy it. That's all. I can go back to play any game, and it could be years ago, and it'll click. Like just the other day with my guitar. I hadn't played in a while, picked it up. It's the same thing. You still remember all the chords. You still remember all the hotkeys. So you can come back and play casual, and you might drop down a bit, because what happens is there's a difference between casual and a difference between coming back 6 months later and a year later, 6 patches, 3 patches later. Casual would be like maybe 5 games a week, couple games a day at most. I'd say couple games a day isn't even casual, but don't come back like 6 months later and expect to play the same game. It'll be different. The meta game, the players are getting better. Stuff always advances. It would be like trying to jump into Warcraft 3 right now and playing against people who've been playing it for 5 years or 6 years or 7 years.
Terrible idea.
Terrible idea, exactly. In fact, I did that with a buddy a long time ago, and we got trashed so hard. I'm like, wow, we used to be good at this game. And like Company Heroes, I went back and played that one for a little bit, but that's totally different game. So you can be casual and it's fine, but just don't take like a 6-month break from a game, come back and expect to be as good as you were when you left. A month here, a month there. The only time I would say that you could do that is like the day of the new patch that changes everything. That then you can come back and kind of be like, this is a new game now. So every once in a while, Blizzard will do that. Like they'll change something that just changes everything. So yeah.
All right, and how about you, Bobby? What do you think about the ladder system and casual players?
I mean, if you're a casual player, what are you playing the game for? You're playing the game to have fun. And so, obviously, if a place where you can have fun is by playing players that are of equal skill level to you, whether you're in the bottom of bronze or the top of diamond, you're looking to have fun by playing players close to your skill level. So the ladder is where you do it. And I think so long as, even if you aren't a great player, so long as you're focused on having fun and realize that, if you are placed correctly in your ladder, you'll win 50% of your games. And some people have a problem winning 50% of their games because that could just feel terrible to some people. They'll be like, feel like a failure because they're only winning 50%. But that's totally normal. You just should have fun. So there's definitely a place for casual players on the ladder.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that that's probably the biggest issue and the biggest problem that a lot of casual players have. Coming from my viewpoint, I'm a pretty competitive gamer. I did a lot of WoW Arena. Before that, I played a lot of first-person shooter games pretty competitively. That's just in my nature. So I'm used to trying to play against people of a higher skill level than myself, and I'm used to winning about 50%, no more nor less. I mean, that's kind of typically where you're used to. But coming from a straight, casual player perspective, someone who's not used to a really competitive environment, that's kind of a little shell shock. That seems to be where the biggest complaints are coming from. They're like, oh, I'm losing like half my games. And I think a lot of people just don't realize that, well, that's what it is intended to do. It intends to drive you to that 0.5 win-loss, ratio. That's what it's shooting for. And I think, again, that's what they have the hardest time dealing with. And that's the reason there's so much griping from casual players about the competitive aspect of it, for sure.
Yeah, just have fun. It's a game you play for fun. Just have fun.
It's a game. What's wrong with you guys? All right, so last question here for today. Let's see what we have. All right, last question is going to be, how do you handle a losing streak of 3+ games? Do you do anything specific to break a losing mindset? Let's start with you, David. I know you've never been on a losing streak, but if you have been on a losing streak, how would you take a break from something like that?
Oh, you don't take a break. You just 6-pool.
So you fall back to the cheese, and you cross your fingers and you hope that you get at least 50%, right?
I mean, it's just it. I'm cracking up over that. Sorry.
Do you think in failing,
it's so Zerg humor? It's like when all else fails, just 6-pool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it used to be too for Terran. It used to be when all else fails, Bunker Reaper Rush, but they threw that out the crapshoot, so it's not that's not an option anymore, unfortunately, for those Terran players. But no, seriously, is that? I mean, you literally just 6-pool after a 3-game losing streak? Is that?
I tend to do a little bit more all-ins because a 10-pool, not a 6-pool, maybe a 10-pool, because sometimes you just need to win in order to get your mentality back to where it is. If you lose and lose and lose, it can really make you feel like, wow, I really suck at this game or something like that, and that's not good.
Just start baneling busting Terrans and toss, basically.
Yeah, some of the, like when I'm watching the GSL, like some players, like they lose 2 games in a row, and you can see they're like visibly shaken about it, stuff like that. Like a best of 5 series type thing, and they lose the first 2 games, pretty one-sided games. You can't let that affect your mentality. So, sometimes maybe just rushing, getting an easy win isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially when I should post up that game against a 2,000 point diamond player at 6-pool, and then I'll get chewed out, and
Oh, yeah, you could always just go on your Smurf account after that too. That's another option. So.
Yeah.
And for those in the audience who don't know, a Smurf account is an account that a fairly high-level player creates just to fight bronze people all day, basically. I'm just kidding. That never happens. So how about you, Bobby? After losing streaks, what do you typically do? Do you take a break, or do you kind of try to grind your teeth, pull through?
I'm a break taker. I feel the same temptation to do some cheesy build just to try to get a win, but then if you lose that game, oh my god, the rage comes out. I start throwing headphones across the room, mice. It can get ugly.
Snap the disc in half.
Yeah. Wait, disc? What is a disc?
Oh, you digital download? I guess you're right. Yeah.
Who uses a disc for games? I don't even know what that is.
People that go to midnight releases like me.
Nice. That was a midnight downloader. But yeah, I always just take a break. I mean, it's really whatever works for you.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Whatever you need to do to kind of get your head back in the game. If you want to keep playing, you could always go read a book or something. Who am I kidding? No one reads, but no. I mean, I guess I would say that I'm.
What century are you in, man?
The good thing to do, though, in all seriousness, is to watch your replays. Why did you lose those games? And let's say you played 3 Terrans in a row and you lost, and then the 4th game was a Terran. Well, then you'd have a better idea of what went wrong in those games, and you can immediately, like all the good players watch their losses, and they know exact what. Well, sheesh, it was that 6-minute. Whatever. It was at the 10-minute mark. This timing push I'm weak against. So look at your replays, analyze what happened, where you're weak, and try to improve in your next game. And of course, take a break. Like I always say, like play like 4 or 5 games and then take a break, because when you get to like the sixth game or something, for some of these guys they can just keep on going. But when you get to a certain point. You're not playing your best anymore, and that's when it's time to stop playing, because the guy that's fresher than you will beat you, even if you guys are equal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I would say from my perspective that I definitely fall along the break lines. I definitely feel like after I've lost one game, I take a break. No, after a game or two of losses that I wasn't happy with, aside from watching the replays, I'll take a break. I'll do something else. I'll maybe like make a video or do whatever just to get my mind off of things, and then really focus on what caused those losses, so future games I can carry things over. All right, well, I think that pretty much about wraps it up for us here today. So once again, this has been
Voices of StarCraft.
Jesus Christ. All right, so thank you guys for watching, and for Vitensby and for Trebis, I have been Force. This was our very first podcast. Please do stay tuned in the future for more. Stay tuned, guys, and take it easy.
Later, guys.
See ya.